What is up? Trails Up Podcast is back with our third episode of the season. We're getting hot and heavy into football season. Week 2 of the preseason's done. And we are diving into some fantasy football talk. Obviously, this is right around the time that people are gearing up for it, doing their drafts, joining in best ball leagues, everything. So we're excited to jump on here and talk a little bit. We're going to do some questions that were asked and then do a little mock draft. And I will let Alex introduce our guest that we have on today.
Absolutely. This is a good friend of mine. I like to call him my favorite nerd. He's been in fantasy football, for a long time now. He's a writer for Apex Fantasy Leagues. And Dalton, help me out with this name. You're an understudy of Mike
Brody.
I thought so. Mike Brody. He's been, Dalton plays in a ton of leagues and started dabbling some best ball here, but he's a great writer for fantasy football. So if you ever want to check out some of his takes, follow him, DK17. I believe that's the Twitter.
Dalton Guru FF.
Dalton Guru FF. Sorry, they're DKs. That's different. But Dalton Guru FF. Follow him on Twitter. Follow his stuff on Apex. And without further ado, Dalton, how are we doing today?
Dude, good. Excited to be on here. I don't really join too many podcasts, but when you offered the opportunity, I figured to hop on. Nothing better than talking fantasy this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talk fantasy football all year. We're in a couple dynasty leagues together. You actually were the first person to get me involved in dynasty football. But tell me, a little bit about how many leagues are you? Or you don't have to talk about how many leagues you're in, but when did you start playing dynasty? When did you start kind of expanding your fantasy football portfolio per se? And when obviously you're really committed to this, writing for Apex. But talk a little bit about your fantasy football background.
Yeah, so I actually started when I was 10 years old. I joined this league that my dad and a bunch of his friends and all their kids, we just all played together. And then right when I started doing that, I kind of fell in love with it. I was always good at fantasy, throughout high school. I was always the guy that people would go to and talk about questions in their fantasy leagues and help them draft stuff. But it wasn't until right after high school where one of my buddies actually connected me up to Mike down Apex. And everything that I thought I knew about fantasy just turned upside down, and he just made me re-question everything. There's just another level that he allowed me to see things from a different perspective. And from there, it's just realizing that I was so lucky to be introduced to him and just trying to learn as much as possible. So over the past, I've known him for the past 4 or 5 years, and through that I've just learned as much as I could. Read a lot of articles from guys from RotoViz and NBC Sports Edge, former Roto World, and just really try to just learn as much as I can in there. And throughout that process, over the past 3 years, I've started playing in a decent sized number of leagues. Definitely a lot of that. It's almost a part-time job for me now. This year, I'll be entering a couple main event teams down in Vegas this year, live drafts. I dabble in redraft, started Dynasty 3 years ago. Those are my main 2 things I focus on, but starting to do some best ball right now. The issue is Arizona is not legal. So if I go out of town, I can kind of do some best ball teams. Maybe do some DFS this year, but mainly Dynasty and redraft are my main 2 focuses right now.
I always forget that Arizona is still restricted from that.
Yeah, we just passed the law. So I think I think once the season starts, I'll be able to do daily fantasy and stuff. But as for the prep for the season, it's not fully enacted yet. So
nice. So are you prefer Dynasty more over obviously season long, I'm guessing?
I actually like them both. I think a lot of people have kind of tended to do more Dynasty, but I like redraft. I still think there's a probably bigger edge in redraft. And that's what I've grown up just playing. So I feel I understand it to its extent probably better than I do any other type of fantasy. So that's kind of why I still love it.
What's interesting about that, Dalton, is you see, we like you said, we talk fantasy football all year round. That's because we are in some dynasty leagues together. And I think lately I've really seen, the increase of people starting to move those dynasty leagues. But what's funny is right now when we say it's redraft season, because the conversations you see on Twitter especially, they flip, from these rookie drafts to and value picks and all that. And obviously that's a big part of what you guys do at Apex and fantasy football in general. But you see you see the conversation switch. The second it turns August, essentially, it's redraft season. So I know you've noticed that too, but I know we've been in a couple leagues for a long time, and I personally noticed, your switch in how you view fantasy football. We're in some leagues in college together, and we obviously met when we were sophomores in college through a mutual friend, and kept the connection ever since. But it's redraft season, so we're gonna if you're looking to get into a redraft right now, we're gonna do a mock draft here soon. What are the big key components you look for?
My biggest thing that I'm trying to do, and this is like I play in a number of leagues, and this is what I'm trying to do on every single one of my teams, is I refuse to walk away out of that draft without George Kittle, Travis Kelce, or Darren Waller. I need one on my team consistently year in, year out, one of those elite tight ends. They're giving you such a massive advantage. You're essentially getting a low-end wide receiver one, or in Kelce's case last year, a high-end wide receiver one in your tight end spot, and you can still start a very good player in your flex spot versus, finding, scraps or guys who don't have that edge. The elite tight ends year in, year out are always going to give you that massive edge over the rest of your league mates. And it gives you the most upside if you do end up hitting on the rest of your picks.
Interesting. Based on their ADPs right now, obviously, I think right now it's Kelce in the first round, Waller in the second round, and then Kittle towards the end of the second round. Who do you think is the best buy out of those three based on their ADP?
That's a really good question. I think they're all very similar. I probably like Kittle best just because he's cheapest. That would probably be my preference. But again, I'm drafting all of them, and it depends on where I am in the draft of who I'm drafting. That's kind of how I'm dictating it. But I would say Kittle at cost is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I love Kittle this year personally. I think that he's going to come back big time, be a good safety valve for them, especially if Trey Lance plays towards the end of the season. You always want that tight end safety valve that he's going to be able to just throw it down to when he's in trouble. So I like him, especially from where he's getting picked. I've ended up with a lot of him for sure.
I think it's a great transition. Yeah, that's the great transition right there as we start up the draft. I know we got a question about some rookie quarterbacks. You mentioned Trey Lance. So when we pop those up.
Yeah. So our first question from some of the listeners that we got was, what rookie quarterback is the safest to draft this year? Obviously, I think this is more of a floor question of who the safest is, but I think it'd be interesting to discuss, all of the rookie quarterbacks a little bit, who you think might be a more ceiling type of guy, someone you might want to risk on towards the end of your drafts, maybe.
This is tough. This is a tough question because there's a lot of guys I do like. If I would go with the safest option, I genuinely view floor, and I try and correlate that with rushing ability because I think, quarterbacks who can have bad games but still rush the ball and still put up great production. So I think Trey Lance is probably the guy with the safest floor in that regard. I think the moment that he steps on the field and is the starter, you're looking at a guy who's going to be a top 12 quarterback. And he also has a ton of upside with the great weapons around him. He's in a good offensive system that should allow for him to be efficient. It's a very good situation for a good rookie quarterback to be in. So I think from that regard, he probably rushes more than any of the other quarterbacks. So that's why I would tend to lean him. I do like a guy like Fields. I know, Alex, you're all over him. That's your guy. I do like him a lot too. I do think that the weapons there aren't as good, and I think Matt Nagy is probably going to be a little bit more stubborn than Kyle Shanahan is in terms of getting him on the field. But regardless, those are probably both the guys that I want, and I'm not necessarily choosing Lance over the other. It's more about Lance and Fields rather than Lance instead of Fields. I want them both on my team, just to be completely clear.
I think that's fair. We talk about rushing, and you make a great point. Having that rushing ability to rely on is a great point for floor. I think that's also something where we don't talk enough about with Trevor Lawrence. I know that again, this we're going to talk about probably the guy who's guaranteed. I think as Urban Meyer wants to play around with it, Trevor Lawrence is going to be a starting quarterback for this team. And people really underestimate Trevor Lawrence's rushing ability. I mean, they ran a lot of read option at Clemson, and that threw a lot of people off guard because, you think of this 6'6", 250 pound or 230-pound plus quarterback, with the physical tools that Trevor has. But he ran the ball a lot, and when he got out of the pocket, he was able to pick up some tough yards. And I do think that won't go. That will go unnoticed. And I think when we talk about safest, we want to talk about floor. And again, if you're going to draft a quarterback for this year out of this rookie class, I do think that the immediate impact that Trevor Lawrence can have, as much as I do love Justin Fields, Matt Nagy is a complete stubborn mule. I think that if you want safe and you want a guy that you can pick up maybe as your QB2, I think, again, safe floor. I think Trevor Lawrence has the ability to run. Obviously, the prototypical pro-style quarterback as well. You're going to get Trevor Lawrence here.
Yeah, I actually tend to agree with that too, because I think you can kind of meld like Fields and Lawrence into the same boat, where it's like those guys still have rushing ability. They're also likely to be good passers too. I personally have been drafting a lot of Trevor Lawrence as well, so I almost feel bad like not including him in there. Like ideally, I want all three of them because I think it's such a unique rookie class, and I think usually you're looking for these late round quarterbacks who can, become these guys that you're drafting super cheap and they end up being like league winners for you. And, after like the Jalen Hurts of the world go, I think like you really start to focus in on those guys. So I think really Trevor Lawrence is absolutely someone who has the rushing ability, and he also is going to be starting from day one too. And his weapons aren't necessarily that bad either. He's for some pretty good weapons as well. So I think that's a good answer right there.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off Alex a little bit. I mean, when we're answering this question down here on the bottom of the screen from our listeners, like obviously Trevor Lawrence is the safest to draft. We know for a fact that he's going to start. Right now, we only know for a fact that two of the rookie quarterbacks are going to start, and that's him and Zach Wilson with the Jets. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence probably in a better situation. We know kind of what we're going to get from him a little bit more. So if you're going to stay safest, obviously Trevor Lawrence makes sense. The interesting thing to note, though, is, I mean, we're looking at Sleeper, which we're going to do our mock draft on here. He's coming in at an 89 ADP right now. So that's like ahead of guys like Matt Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, a couple picks behind Brady. Does that scare you guys at all that he's getting put up into that spot around those guys? Like, would you feel more comfortable with him or some of those other guys at a possible later ADP?
Yeah, that's why I tend to go Fields and Lance. It's just the draft price that you have to get those guys at versus a guy like Lawrence. I think it's definitely over the past couple of weeks, it's started to get closer from Fields and Lance up to Lawrence. Just with, possible reports of them playing a lot sooner than anticipated. But yeah, that is one of the things that we're at cost. I'm definitely preferring the other guys, even though I do like Lawrence.
For sure. All right, since we're already on the rookie talk, this wasn't a question from the listeners, but I think it's something interesting since we're already on it. What is a running back, wide receiver, or tight end rookie that you think like you must get if you're in a redraft right now? Like, who is the guy that you really like? Could be a late round sleeper or an earlier guy, but someone that you think like is a must draft right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna not do one of the top guys here, and I'm gonna go with my guy Terrace Marshall. I think Terrace Marshall is extremely undervalued, underrated. I think that if Terrace Marshall didn't get hurt in his year alongside Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, we would be comparing him similar to those guys, and the dude absolutely balled out when those guys left with less quarterback or worse quarterback play than what he had with Joe Burrow there. I think this guy's an absolute stud. I think he's going to end up being one of the better receivers in the league. Reports out of camp are glowing. He's in an offense in which he's familiar with Joe Brady down there with the Panthers. They play a lot of 3 wide receiver sets there. Last year, the Panthers had 3 top 30 wide receivers in fantasy points. He's going to be starting from day one. They're using him in the slot. They're using him on formation. He is going to have an immediate impact where I think people aren't as high on him in regards to a bunch of other big names, the Devontae Smiths, the Jalen Waddles, Jamar Chases. I think Terrace Marshall kind of gets thrown under the radar, but I think that he has a chance to have a breakout rookie season similar to what we saw from a guy like T. Higgins last year. Like, that's the guy that I'm all in on. I think that he is someone that even if he doesn't like break out to the fullest extent this year, I think he's going to be good enough to where in the second half of the year, like he's a guy that you're starting week in week out, and then potentially even like being a guy that relies on from the beginning of the season. Like I think he can be that good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head there. I think he's a great late round guy, and obviously he's garnering a little more attention in the higher realms of the fantasy football, like gurus and everybody like that love him. But I think he's definitely someone, if you're playing in a league with your friends or a few people that may not be up to date with what's going on in the fantasy world, I think he's definitely someone that could be really sneaky. I mean, you mentioned it with the Joe Brady connection at LSU. I mean, they had 3 wide receivers last year that all pretty much had good years between Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. Curtis Samuel, who's now gone. Can he take over that role a little bit? Obviously not the same player, but that production needs to go somewhere. And we know they don't really use their tight end much. So I love that pick. Was there anybody else that you're thinking about, Alex?
I think Dalton hits on the nose. I think that again, if you're going to look for one of these rookies, I mean, Jamar Chase, I personally think is getting drafted a little bit too high for his potential production. I think I'm going to change the question a little bit and Dalton can kind of put his 2 cents in. But I think for rookies to avoid as from where they're drafted, I think the number one guy on this list, if we're gonna fade a rookie. And again, Dalton, just so you know, obviously we do like to focus on the rookies because we love, we're college football focused podcast. We do like to talk about, these young guys that just graduated, but just came up. But I think Travis Etienne is that guy that I think for value wise, you kind of want to fade. I think he's the one guy out of the first round, besides for Kadarius Toney. I think his role is not really defined. I think, people see him coming in as a first round running back. Like you want to jump all over him, but I think they basically given the nod to James Robinson, who has a bell cow profile. I think he's a guy that's going to get a lot of the early down carries and the goal line touches. Travis Etienne, they're going to try to make into this rover, which I think basically throws up way too many question marks, especially for this year. So I think personally, if you're gonna look to get one of these rookies, I would fade Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, to be honest. I think so. I think it depends on your scoring system. I think if you're in a PPR league, I think Travis Etienne is definitely interesting. I think again there could be questions about his role, but it's clear the Jaguars like him. Like you're not going to draft a running back in the first round without potential to utilize him in some way, shape, or form. Yes, we know like these rookie running backs. Right off the bat, they don't start. They don't see the workload. But as the year progresses, we see their role start to increase. Antonio Gibson started getting his role increased. DeAndre Swift had to, work with Adrian Peterson before he started seeing some work. J.K. Dobbins was working with Mark Ingram before he started getting some more work. So, naturally that's going to happen, especially when you have a guy like James Robinson there. But I think they're in 2 separate roles. I kind of look at it the same way I would view Travis Etienne, almost like a similar kind of skill sets like an Alvin Kamara, to where Latavius Murray is still there with Alvin Kamara, yet Alvin Kamara is the one who's producing all the fantasy points, putting up all the production, and Latavius Murray is still a good running back. And I think, to a lesser extent, obviously that we're talking about the Jaguars and not the Saints here, but to a lesser extent, we can see that role. And also there's upside for Travis Etienne to start to garner some of James Robinson's rushing work and, maybe get some of the line work as well. I think there's a lot of outs for him to do that. And we want to be chasing guys who have the profile to catch the ball. He's an athletic running back. And I think, it would be tough for me to see just them utilize James Robinson over Etienne over the course of the season, especially after spending a first round pick. But again, it's the NFL. Urban Meyer's never been, he's from the college ranks. We don't there is a lot of questions there. And I think that's a valid concern when it comes to the Jaguars. Is his role gonna, coincide with Laviska, or how are they gonna use these pieces? I think that's fair questions, but at the end of the day, I want to bet on guys that I believe are talented. I believe have the upside in the receiving game as a running back, who are athletic, and a team that invested a lot in them. And I think Travis Etienne does kind of fit that bill.
Yeah. And I'm kind of in the middle between you guys. Obviously, I'm scared a little bit about, what he's seen in preseason so far, kind of what his role is with James Robinson, but Urban Meyer really doesn't have any loyal into James Robinson. So, it's an interesting situation to look at. But I think we should get into the draft. So I will share my screen here, and then we will kick it off. And I think we can, stop every now and then just to kind of like discuss certain things. So the draft is up on the board. So right now we have Alex sitting at the 4 spot, Dalton in the 8 spot, and then me in the 12 spot. So we kind of wanted to break it up a little bit, show you guys, possible different positions that you could be in. And then we can like kind of pause it as it goes. So this draft, I'll just like show the settings real quick. Just PPR, snake draft. We're gonna do 12 teams because that's like that the average draft that happens. And then, pretty normal roster with quarterback, 2 running backs, wide receivers, tight end, and then 3 flex spots. And then we'll do some bench spots so we can get into some of the sleepers that we like. So we'll just kick it off. Obviously, the computer will be taking over some of the other spots. So got to give us a break here and there on that because we never know what they might do. Probably will go along with the ADP, but we will see. So we'll just start it off here. So we are to Alex. So kind of talk through what you're thinking here.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't take too long on each pick, and I think also at the same time, Jared, if you want to pull up some of these questions too, as especially we get towards the later rounds. But surprisingly, in this draft, Derrick Henry went 3rd. So which is it's interesting to me. I think in a lot of mock drafts, I think it is going to go McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara. In this instance, to be honest, I have listened to a lot of Dalton, and I know on ESPN in one of the leagues they have Kelsey the 4th ranked player. His ADP is not that, so I think in this instance that we're presented here with Henry going 3rd, I'm probably going to take Kamara here. I think with that again, we see a long run of running backs go off the board. I think in a normal situation, if Kamara goes 3rd, I might be looking at Devontae Adams. I might be looking at Travis Kelce there. But I think with what we see here, I like Kamara for the 4th pick. That's why I took him here.
All right, cool. Go ahead, Dalton.
I'm up here at 8, and this is tough. So sleeper ADP does differ from a little bit what I'm used to drafting. Usually, guys, I'm at the 8 spot. Saquon has fallen a bit just because of the injury, and Jonathan Taylor. People are still concerned about Wentz and that offense. So those are guys that at 8 are like majority of the time there, but in this scenario, they're not. So those are guys I'm usually considering at this spot. And I usually, it depends on where I am in the draft, but I like to get like 1 running back and then just start hammering like other positions. But at this spot, I don't feel comfortable like, putting my going all in on a guy like Zeke, on a big Pollard guy there. And a lot of these running backs I feel like are good, but they don't have like the league winning upside that I'd necessarily be targeting right here. And I think it's like the safe bet for me, like I mentioned earlier. I want one of the tight ends, so I'm going to take Travis Kelce at 8.
Cool. So a little weird scenario with Zeke falling, obviously. Strange right there. I think I'm in an interesting spot. People usually get excited about being in that 12 hole because they get that back-to-back pick. Don't pick for a while afterwards, but it's exciting to be able to get the 12th and 13th best player on the board. I'm usually kind of a dip when everybody is diving type of person earlier on in the round. Kind of what Dalton did, with going a different position than what everybody else is getting, and then you're getting a top guy at that certain position. I think right here, I think this is a big spot to get someone like Austin Eckler. Obviously, with the PPR upside, I think it's huge. And we've seen, the resurgence of Justin Herbert going off last year. I think he's only going to get better. and hopefully we get a healthy season out of Eckler. So I'm going to go him here. And then at wide receiver, I think I'm probably going to go Stephon Diggs. I think he's just in a great scenario there.
Patrick
Obviously,
Mahomes going there.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
pretty crazy.
Hey Dalton, really quickly, and this is
Yeah.
100% because I have him in our one of our leagues together. Give me your actually I don't have this. Give me 30 seconds on your Saquon Barkley outlook this year.
I really like him. I know there's concerns about his injury, and there is reason to be skeptical about a guy coming off an ACL, and also in that offense. So there definitely is a lot of downside there. But when you're targeting a running back early on, you want someone who can not only be a workhorse, but be a workhorse in the receiving game as well. We've seen Saquon just be an absolute monster. His rookie year, dude was historic. He was a generational prospect. Year 2 had a high ankle sprain, so he never really got to be like his full self until later in the year, which he also balled out. And then last year he had the ACL. So it's like we haven't had this full. I mean, there could be like this recency bias of like how good Saquon Barkley actually is. Like, let's not forget this was a generational running back, freak athlete, can do everything in the receiving game, can be a great rusher as well. He really fits the prototype as someone that goes in the top 3 drafts, but you're getting a discount right now because of his perceived injury, which I'm all about.
Love it. On the clock, go ahead.
All right, so on the clock here, this is tough because I think there's I like Antonio Gibson here. I do have concerns that I think he has a talent skill set to be one of the best running backs in the league in terms of a full workhorse, but I'm not sure that they will utilize him in that way. I think J.D. McKissic is a thorn in his side in the receiving game. So this is tough. This is actually really tough for me because I really am upset I didn't get one of those running backs, and normally I would take Waller at this spot, but I'm going to go with my guy here, A.J. Brown. I think there's like 3 or 4 wide receivers you could take here. Justin Jefferson and Ridley really come to mind, but I'm going to go A.J. Brown. I like the wide. I didn't like the spot there, but I think it was just a decent pick based on.
Wow, we see another run of running backs here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I just threw a flyer on J.D. McKissic, making a trade for him. And a running back I need some depth in. So yeah, he's kind of that just weird,
Can you believe that we're talking about J.D. McKissic?
J.D. McKissic making appearances on this. All right, this is great. This is actually my favorite turn. The second, third turn.
You got a lot of good players here.
I have a lot of good players. And I unlike Jared, I like to dive when people dive. I like to read the trends of the draft. I think I think you have to at some point. I think you really do.
So Dobbins.
I'm not going Dobbins because and I'll tell you why I'm not. I'm gonna go wide receiver here because I noticed because there's 3 unbelievable wide receivers here. I have some buyer's remorse with Justin Jefferson, so I want to lean JJ. So there's some thoughts there. DeAndre Hopkins is obviously DeAndre Hopkins. He's one of the top 3 receivers, and if you can argue number 1. But I think as far as the guy, I think Calvin Ridley, if he's here, is the pick here. I think
I love him.
as far as with Julio Jones leaving, I think with the complement he plays with Kyle Pitts and Hopkins goes right after that. Jefferson goes right there.
Yeah, that was a good pick.
So I think Ridley's the pick there. I think he's got the best opportunity to grow even more. He was fantastic without Julio Jones on the field in the first place, and now he's not even on the team. So, he's a real defensive killer.
Okay, so now that we're finished with the first 2 rounds, we'll quickly talk about a question from a listener. So what first or second round ADP player currently are you worried about the most? So not necessarily what's been picked on our board so far, because I know there's some guys that have fallen, but who's a guy that you're worried about that's probably getting picked in that like top 24?
Go ahead, Dalton.
Derrick Henry.
Okay.
Yeah, Derrick Henry for me. So and this is specifically like PPR based. If you get to like half PPR standard, this is less of a concern when it comes to Derrick Henry. So last year, if we look at like all win rates for all players, and I told you that Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,000 yards at 17 touchdowns, you would assume that this guy is winning leagues for everybody across the board. Wrong. Derrick Henry, winning a 2,000-yard season with 17 touchdowns, had an 11% win rate. That's only 3% more than the average win rate. So there is a lot that Derrick Henry has to do just to become above average. His path to becoming a Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara like dominator who can on a week in week out basis give you 25 plus a game, it's tough to be there when his work in the receiving role is very minimal. And we have yet to see through 5 years that he can do that. So basically, you're drafting him at his ceiling right now and hoping that he's putting up another 18, 19, 2,000 yard on the ground season. And there's a lot of downside to that. And I'm not saying that he's going to be bad, but I'm saying you're drafting him right now at like RB3 or RB4 when I say RB3. Exactly. You're drafting him as RB3 when I don't think you're going to get the same type of impact that you're hoping from that, when you could probably getting like a mid to low end RB1 if he doesn't do the same thing he did last year.
Yeah, Alex? I mean, I that would have been my pick. It's funny enough because in our home league, Dalton, I made a ridiculous trade 3 years ago. I threw Derrick Henry to the wayside, and I needed him. I needed him in one of my championship runs in that league, and I threw him to the wayside. That team, I had Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry somehow on the same team. So I agree. I think that you're not going to get the PPR output with Derrick Henry. I think there is value in not drafting him there. That's why Kamara. I think again, Kamara had a ridiculous 6 touchdown game last season. So you're probably not going to get. You might not get the ridiculous production he had. He might not be running back 1 this year, but he's not going to lose. If Kamara stays healthy, he's not going to lose you the league. You know, he's above league average in different in those things. And I think Kamara's got to be the RB3, and I think, like Dalton said, Derrick Henry's PPR outlook is not as high as a guy like Kamara, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, who are in that. Even Saquon if he stays healthy. So, I definitely think that's one to be really wary of.
Honestly, someone that I'm scared about right now is Nick Chubb. I think he's going to see some touchdown regression. First 2 seasons, he had 8 touchdowns. In both of them, he had 12. This past year, I think they really like that combo of him and Kareem Hunt. And I just see them continuing to use Hunt as much as possible in the pass game. And I think obviously that scares me if he regresses in the touchdowns from 12 back to that 8, 9 range, even 10. We could be worried because he's not going to get that pass game as much as usual. And then add in the fact that we're going to see Odell Beckham back. I think that this could be kind of a spot where, Chubb could fall down a little bit from that. In our draft, it says that he's 6. I think he's going around like 8 in most drafts. And I'd be worried about him falling farther from that throughout the season.
Yeah, naturally. I mean, I think both those guys kind of fit the same mold. Great NFL talents, great running backs, but for fantasy purposes, they don't catch enough passes to warrant their high selection and upside.
So I'm on the clock again here. I think there's one pick. I think there's one pick to be made here. Usually, this is where I would take a tight end anyway. Usually, George Kittle is sitting here, not Darren Waller. But for the sake of this draft, again, there's only one pick. And, to leave the first 3 rounds with my running back 1, my wide receiver 1, and now my tight end 1, who was a top 10 wide receiver and running back scorer, like if you put them together, Darren Waller is easily the pick.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I don't think he's going to fall to that spot in most drafts.
I think that's where Kittle. That's where I'd probably take Kittle. I think that. I think Kamara, if you can get Kamara at 4, it's a great pick. I think Ridley is taken way before when I took him at 2.9. But I'll probably take a wide receiver with that second pick too. Probably, between a DK Metcalf, a Justin Jefferson, and if AJ Brown slips through Dalton's hand, I'm probably picking him up there. And then that 3-4, I'm probably taking a George Kittle there, or if DeAndre Swift is still there, maybe. But I think with what we were working with, if Darren Waller is there at the turn at 3-4, I'm taking him.
I'm up here. as we've seen, there's been so many running backs that have been off the board where I feel like if I were to draft one of them right now, like I'd just almost be chasing. And right now, that has just allowed a lot of really good receivers to come over here. I also noticed we're drafting as like 3 flexes, so there is
Yeah.
more flexibility in starting extra receivers, especially in PPR format. A lot of the receivers are gonna outscore those running backs. Obviously, the elite running backs are going to be the anchors, but in the 3rd round, it's going to be really hard to find one of the guys, and I'd rather just take the high floor of a guy that I feel like has upside, but is also like in a good offense. And the guy that I'm going to take here is CeeDee Lamb. Great offense,
Wow.
2nd-year breakout. He's actually going around this range or a little bit earlier in most drafts, so I think like that's a pick that I'm really confident about right there.
Over
Gotcha.
Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I like the offense a little better.
Yeah.
And I think CD actually has a chance to be better than McLaurin too. So
Go for it.
Hi, right here, back-to-back picks. I personally think that Allen Robinson is a good spot
pick.
here. I think he's 1A on that team. They're going to try and get him the ball as much as possible. And I think that's a no-brainer pick right here. Now, obviously, the worry is like running backs kind of falling out there. I'm not going to pick again until, the end of the 5th round. I'm not loving a lot of these guys. Obviously, I probably don't want to go David Montgomery after just going with Allen Robinson. So I think I'm going to continue to punt running back. And I think I'm going to go with someone on the other side of the ball than Dalton's pick, and I'm going to go with Amari Cooper.
I thought you were about to go defense.
On the other side of the defense. On the other side of the ball, yeah.
This draft has no defenses, but no defense or kicker, by the way. So we have 3 flex spots instead.
No, and I know that there's still like some home leagues that do that and stuff, but I know a lot of like more higher up leagues are kind of trending away from kicker and defense. So I thought it'd be more interesting for us to get into some more like deep sleepers than, who are going to pick a kicker and defense. I think those are somewhat obvious at this point. So go ahead, Dalton.
Yeah. This spot's really interesting. I always have a tough spot. I don't know. First of all, I don't even know why I chose the 8th spot. It's like the worst spot to be in. There's no value anywhere. So I'm just like putting myself.
But hey, that's good though, because
when there's no value, you take the best player available. That should be drilled into your head. Best player available.
Well, at least you're helping someone out if they get the 8th spot. Now this will help them know.
Yeah. I'll just say this. I'm only looking at wide receiver right now. I think there's like the top 4 or 5, like a lot of the guys at the top of my board to be wide receiver here. And I'm just gonna lean into it. Again, there's extra flexes here. Like I'm not concerned. I don't want to be chasing a running back until I feel like, hey, I'm getting a running back with like insane upside, or it just a cost in which I don't have to like fade one of these like potential top wide receivers. The 2 guys I'm choosing between right now would be like Godwin and DJ Moore. I think Cooper Kupp is an interesting conversation there too.
We know who you love.
Even T. Higgins, but I don't think I need to take him here. I'm gonna go with DJ Moore here. I just like the offense. He's just been so consistent the last couple of years, and if he gets some positive touchdown regression, he can be someone that easily finishes a wide receiver 1. So I really like him.
So honestly, I was thinking about him in my 2nd wide receiver I took there, so definitely a good pick.
We've got 2 rookies picked here, boys. We got Kyle Pitts on Travis Etienne, who I mentioned that, again, that ADP scares me a little bit where he's at. If you guys just let's do really quickly. Talk about Pitts. And give. I think he's 20. First of all, he's 20 years old. So I think Dalton. I know you have the take of him in Dynasty is probably one of the most untouchable assets in a rookie that we've had in a long time. But really quickly, give me your Kyle Pitts synopsis.
Oh, Kyle Pitts, I think is going to be incredible. He's going to be utilized more as a wide receiver than a tight end. I'm worried about his year 1 production just because we historically haven't seen tight ends do well. And if you're drafting him like the 4th round or even like the 5th round, you're essentially like hoping he's the best tight end as a rookie outside of, the top 3. And the thing that makes it tough with that, even if you treat him as a wide receiver, a lot of the wide receivers like don't necessarily like do that either. So like I mean, there's a guy that's been comped to. I don't know if this is fair. Like Megatron. Like Megatron's rookie year, like he only had like 700 yards. Like he wasn't exactly like this world beater right off the bat. So I think Kyle Pitts is going to be that guy. Like I'm all in on Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to be that guy. I just have issues with the price tag right now and where he's going. And there's almost like this overconfidence that it's going to happen year one, which it absolutely could happen. Absolutely could happen. And I hope it does happen. But I think there's risk in that pick without like knowing, how he's going to be utilizing that offense right off the bat, especially if there's going to be a learning curve with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, the common phrase is rookie tight ends, never really live up to what they're supposed to be. I think in redrafts, for sure, you probably should try to get a tight end later on. But Dynasty, as you mentioned, he's, up there for sure. So
we're draining my clock. Yeah, we're draining my clock here. And it's just so interesting because – no, it's okay. No, it's okay. I'll make it real quick. This is going to be – it's weird because the ADPs, you're right, are a little bit off from the leagues that I'm in. I mean, the quarterbacks are flying off the board here. I see that trend. I'm looking at the quarterback
off the board. There's only been 3,
but it's only the 4th round. I mean, that's the wild part. It's the 4th round. There's 3 quarterbacks taken. Like, is that? I don't know if that's something that's natural for you guys to see, but I think, like Dalton, like I've said to Dalton, when there's no value here, you take the best player available, and I personally think the best player available is Tom Brady's safety blanket. I think I got to go Chris Godwin with this pick here.
Nice pick.
Yeah.
Nice pick.
Are we worried at all because he kind of took a hit with when Antonio Brown started playing?
No, I think obviously Tom Brady had the rapport with Antonio Brown. He brought him to Tampa. I think that I'm not worried about it. I think Chris Godwin is a great player, and it's in himself a contract year. Also, people forget that, but I think he's still reliable. I think Mike Evans is the guy you fade on that team. To be honest, I think Mike Evans for where he's getting drafted, he's touchdown or bust. So I think you got to go like Chris Godwin. He's that safety blanket. He's a 100 reception type player there. So yeah, I'm up again. I've got my running back 1. I've got 2 wide receivers. I got my tight end. Again, this turn for me is one of my favorite turns. Because usually I'm going for that best player available, but also at this point, so I took the best player available, but right now I'm going to go for upside. And I think looking at these guys here, I'm going to go wide receiver again. I am going to go for a little bit what might seem like a reach here, but also I know that the guy that's picking next might not let this guy get back to me. I think upside here, we're going to go T. Higgins.
Dang it, man. Dang, that's a great pick. That's a great pick. See, if I had known you were going to take him, I would have taken him in the 4th round. But I thought he was going to fall back. But that's part of the game too.
That's me doing my homework.
Yeah.
So as Dalton's talking, Alex, talk a little bit about this Cincinnati situation. Obviously, there's 3 really good wide receivers there. We saw Jamar Chase come off the board right there, right after your pick. What do you think we're going to see? Obviously, you think T. Higgins is going to have a great season, but what do you think we're going to see from this offense this year?
I don't want to steal Dalton's thunder because I think this is something he can absolutely go off on the second-year boom, so I'll keep mine really quickly. Jamar Chase has shown drop issues, and I think for rookies that happens. And I think that's something, and that could go away. Jerry Jeudy had drop issues last year too, and obviously he was the number 1 target there. I think, Tyler Boyd is still there. I think he's also a guy, if you take a T. Higgins, you can look to get Tyler Boyd later on in the draft, I think for very good value for season long. I think T. Higgins has that. I mean, he's got the build for this. When he played with Joe Burrow, he was one of the most efficient receivers you had last year. I think he's a guy you absolutely have to get. And if you reach for him, But I think he's a must-have for leagues this year.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. T. Higgins is a must-have for leagues this year. That's all anyone needs to know. I mean, I think he's going to be the guy that we're looking back on and being like, why was this guy being drafted in the 5th round? Like, he was so good as a rookie. He's a great prospect. He's in an offense that passes a ton. He's got good weapons alongside him. Like, he really checks all the boxes you're looking for. And I think he's going to be absolutely dynamite this year. Absolutely dynamite.
I think one thing that's really quick before you draft, I think something that's unsaid. When you have as many weapons as the Bengals have, that leaves more one-on-one coverage opportunities on the outside for a guy like T. Higgins. I mean, Jamar Chase will take pressure away off him. Tyler Boyd will as well. You're going to have a lot of one-on-one situations with T. Higgins. And if they go off of him, Tyler Boyd can go off or Jamar Chase can go. Like, if they double, like, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that are going to open up. Yeah, you might, like, targets might go away, but we've seen the Bengals love to run 5 wide, empty backfield. So there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed, but they'll feed them.
I'll expand on that too. So since 2018, if we look at the top 15 point scorers at either wide receiver or tight end, 11 of the top 15 players since 2018 have had another teammate in the top 15. It just shows that having another good weapon alongside of you is actually a good thing. And I think a lot of people are really concerned about, the target's here and the target's here and where are they going to go? Look, everything works itself out. The good players are going to get the good things. And yes, maybe they get 5 to 10 less targets, but they're going to be much more efficient because, like you said, they can't double team. They can't put all their energy on one guy, and it allows both guys to eat. And I think like we're going to see it this year with the Tennessee. We're going to see it with Dallas. We see it with Seattle. Like we see it with Tyreek and Kelsey. Like we're going to see it with, of course, like the Bengals too. Now it's only like a good thing for T. Higgins, and I think right now in the past couple of weeks, like with like everyone talking about Jamar Chase and his drops and whatever, like not looking good, like everyone's starting to be more on T. Higgins, but it's like you want like both of these guys. You want both because you want Tyler Boyd too. Like I just want pieces of an offense in which I think is good. And if an injury happens to one of the guys, like the other guy can just step in and immediately just get that production. Like there's not going to be any drop off. So I'll talk.
That was just as much a AJ Brown tweet as that was a Cincinnati Bengals tweet. We get it.
I always got to throw AJ Brown in there. You know how it is. Sorry. So I'm on the clock here again. Another tough spot. I think like I'm in a tier right now where there's 4 wide receivers that I could draft here. And if I really wanted to get contrarian, and if I were in a draft, I probably would take a wide receiver here. But just because I don't know if this guy's gonna make it back to me, and I do wanna get some sort of upside at running back here. I'm gonna take Javonte Williams right here.
Nice.
Because I got some good wide receiver values there, but I can still likely get one of them on the way back when I think Javonte is like the clear running back to me that was standing out. So if I can just end that tier at running back and then just hope one of the wide receivers comes back, I think that's probably the best move for me.
Nice.
Cool. I'm going to go actually wide receiver here. I think he's the top option for Pittsburgh. We've seen he's more of their, slot guy that's going to get a lot of targets. He had a couple of drop issues last year, but I think he's just the type of guy that they're just going to continue to pound the ball to. He's a safe target for Ben Roethlisberger. They have a connection. I think it just makes sense to go here again, especially with those 3 flex spots. And then I'm probably gonna go running back here. Obviously, we have to have 2 running back spots. It's getting to that like nervous territory where you kind of, when you punt it at the beginning, you probably want to go running back around here, or you're gonna miss out on all the starters. So I think I'm probably gonna go Chase Edmonds here. I'm a big fan of him. I know that as we were talking earlier, Alex mentioned that Dalton, that you're a big fan of Benjamin. So what do you think of that backfield situation?
Yeah, so I'm a Cardinals fan, so I do get to see it up close in person. I do like Chase Edmonds. I really like him a lot. I think he's a good running back. He does a lot of things well. But there's clear signs that the Cardinals don't believe he's a workhorse. They brought in Kenyon Drake last year. They signed James Conner. And, talk out of camp is consistently from both Chase Edmonds and James Conner. They both seem to believe like this is going to be like a 50-50 split. Again, Edmonds is getting a more important receiving role, but we also have to keep in mind like rushing quarterbacks deteriorate some of the targets and passing opportunities for these running backs. So that's a slight concern for me. But if I had to bet on someone, it would be Chase Edmonds, just because I do think like he's actually a good running back and he does a lot of things well. But my thing is, at cost, I just love Eno because I think he's very similar to Chase Edmonds And I really don't think that there would be much of a difference if you threw, Benjamin in there instead of Chase Edmonds in terms of like the overall offense
Gotcha.
and how it perform and the things he could do. So it's just more of a cost thing for me where I feel like you're getting a very similar player who, maybe just has an extra hurdle to playing time, but if you got that playing time, you're getting the same type of production. So
Yeah.
In that realm though, I do like Chase Edmonds. All right, so I'm on the clock here. I got like a minute left. This one's like pretty locked and loaded for me. If I'm in a draft, like the moment I'm on the clock, I'm clicking this guy. It's Chase Claypool. So the thing was for me was I was the last pick. I had Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, and Chase Claypool, like all in a similar tier. And I figured one of them wouldn't make it back, and they did make it back. Chase Claypool for me, he's similar to like a guy like T. Higgins, where we touched on good offenses. Pittsburgh last year had top 30 wide receivers. It's offense you want to be part of. Chase Claypool, freak athletically. His rookie comps are insane. He had good efficiency as a rookie. He saw a lot of targets as a rookie. He fits that alpha mold, and I think people could be underrating his actual upside as a player. Like we see it every single year. These year two guys. Who was it last year? It was A.J. Brown. It was DK Metcalf. It was Terry McLaurin. Guys who were being drafted in the 4th, 5th. Sometimes like McLaurin was even going in the 6th round last year. And these are guys that everybody's starting on a week-to-week basis, and they're relying on for their teams. And if you get a guy like that, Chase Claypool, or like T. Higgins, or Brandon, like these are all like similar guys that you're getting in this 5th, 6th round. If you look back every single year, it's always the same guys, same type of profiles that are always outperforming. And so second-year guys. And Chase Claypool for me is way too cheap in the 6th round. And I'm just every single time he's there, I'm just hitting the draft. But I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, no, those I know. Again, as a Cardinals fan, that makes sense. I guess what you want to do. Do you want to maybe pull up some questions while we pull some of those questions? We'll just go through these picks and explain a little bit.
Let's all three kind of like go through our next, 2 rounds of picks here, and then we'll like just kind of like talk in the background while we're making the picks, and then we can kind of go back and explain like multiple picks.
Absolutely.
So, as Alex is picking, and then obviously Dalton, and then I will pick, we talked a little bit about some of those guys. I mean, you just mentioned Chase Claypool. I know you liked CeeDee Lamb earlier. You guys both love T. Higgins. Who do you think is going to take that like biggest sophomore bump, or maybe like who you think is going to take that drop in their second year? Obviously, Alex went Justin Herbert. So what are you guys thinking for that question?
I can speak on this first, Dalton, if you want to make your pick here. I picked the last pick. I picked the MVP. I think Justin Herbert is going to win the MVP this year. I think that guy is going to break out at the quarterback position. I think looking at this, Aaron Rodgers went literally right next. So I believe in my heart of heart, I made the right pick here. Yeah, if you're in a super flex league, Justin Herbert's going 3rd in dynasty leagues, 2nd or 3rd. I mean, this guy's upside is through the roof. I think that offense has gotten so much better behind him. I think he's a guy you got to target as that mid-round quarterback. I think the tier, the last round we're looking at, the Mostert, the Beckham, the Devontae Smith. I took Debo afterwards. I think that's kind of a lull round where I could get away with taking a quarterback. So my second-year bump, I'm going to mention it, Justin Herbert MVP campaign started yesterday.
I love it. I'm all in. I'm all on Herbert. Let's go.
As I'm picking Dalton, go ahead and talk about Judy. Is he someone that you like for your big sophomore bump?
Yeah, he's not someone I'm as confident in. I think the main guys I'd be confident in are obviously Jefferson, Lamb, Claypool, Higgins, Ayuk. I'd say those 5. Actually, like, and the guy I'll take here as well is another guy I'll touch on too because it fits the same mold. But he's not someone I'm necessarily as high on as the other guys. I think those other guys offer more high probability profiles. Jerry Jeudy was more like inefficient as a rookie. He does have the draft capital. He's going to see playing time. He did get a lot of targets. He has big playability. He's surrounded by other good weapons, which I think is a good thing for his price because it keeps him down a little bit. And if Drew Lock, ends up playing well, or if the injury happens there, like there's a lot of outs for Jerry Jeudy to do well. And I also think it's possible that Jerry Jeudy's poor rookie season isn't necessarily like an indictment of who he actually is as a wide receiver, and he's actually much better than what he showed as a rookie. So you're essentially paying like a 7th-round price tag on a bet that this guy's going to be a lot better. He's going to get a lot of opportunities in the offense where he potentially can be the #1 wide receiver. He's just the type of profile that I think like can do a lot of big things there. And then touching on the next guy, this is actually a guy I like more than Judy, but he goes later than Judy, so I don't have to draft him where Judy is, and it's Laviska Shenault. Same type of thing. 2nd-year guy, good profile coming out. He's a big guy who is net neutral as a rookie, showed some moments, had 58 receptions, got some good comparables to like some of the better wide receivers over the last 10 years. Like I think I tweeted out today some of his comps, and it's guys like Cortland Sutton, Allen Robinson, Josh Gordon, Devontae Adams, or just a couple of the names. So I think he has a lot of upside, and people maybe just overlooking it because he wasn't necessarily amazing as a rookie. He missed some games. And I think people are just kind of questioning that whole offense as a whole, but he really does fit a profile of someone who can break out and be someone that on a week-to-week basis can be just a difference maker for your team. And I like the cost in the 7th, 8th round for one of those guys.
Yeah, Visca's a guy. Love Visca.
Alex, go into your San Fran picks there a little bit. Why back-to-back San Fran picks there? What do you like about those guys?
I took the 2 best running backs on San Francisco's team, Deebo Samuel and Trey Sermon. I think Deebo Samuel is, he is literally the Kyle Shanahan. Let's just throw this guy anywhere and just see what happens. He's basically like one of those crash dummies or test subjects that Shanahan just loves to mess with. George Kittle's that #1 option there. Brandon Ayuk is a breakout, is that sophomore bump breakout potential person. But I think if you're looking at we know what Deebo's going to get us. He's going to get us some rushing. He's going to get us some rushing touchdowns. He's going to get us obviously the receiving touchdowns. He's going to be a security blanket as well to Jimmy Garoppolo when he starts. I'm very curious to see how Trey Lance fits with him, but I think Deebo Samuel's also another guy. He's my wide receiver 4 right now on this team. I love his upside. I think he's someone that he does it all for San Francisco. I think that's a really interesting pick if you're eyeing a guy in that range. And then I went Trey Sermon. I'm not an Ohio State guy, but I think Trey Sermon really came on at the end of last season. I think he's a guy that's again, the Kyle Shanahan offense loves these type of running backs that can really that just come out of nowhere. And I think with Mostert obviously up and down with injuries, Mostert's going in the 6th, 7th round. I think if you can snag a Trey Sermon a round or 2 later, I think you get just as much, if not more, value from that pick.
Okay, and then Dalton.
Back-to-back 2nd year.
Talk about. It looks like you went 4 sophomore guys in a row. So is this basically just because of the way the draft fell, or are you really high on the 2020 class?
Obviously I'm very high on the class itself, but I think it's just more of a philosophy and understanding that these sophomore players are the players that tend to be ADP. The guys who are tending to break out. And the thing about it is when it comes to these players, there's a lot of unknown in who they actually are. When you're drafting, a Hopkins, or you're drafting, like a Dallas Goedert, or a Jarvis Landry, you have years of knowing who these players are and the type of player you're going to get. And when it comes to these 2nd-year guys, is we only have this small sample of a rookie year of who they are. Like we can look back at college and be like, we can think he can be this and we can think he can be that, but like there's a lot of like unknown upside in these guys, because what if they're better than we think? Like what if their teams like end up throwing in the ball? And every single year, like there's data to prove that these 2nd-year guys get more opportunities from their 2nd year. So it's like people when people put projections together, it's hard to like go like so high on a guy like DK Metcalf or AJ Brown or expecting to see this massive jump in production, but it tends to work out that way just because projections can only see so much, and that's what ADP is mainly based off. Is mainly based on projections. if we look year to year and look at the guys that are beating ADP on a consistent basis, it's these type of guys every single year. Like AJ Dillon, the Packers just signed Aaron Jones to a big contract, but by every indication, they want AJ Dillon to have some sort of role, whether it's Jamal Williams' role. If anything does happen to a guy like Aaron Jones, like AJ Dillon can easily be like, Derrick Henry lighter in that type of mold of player, and you're getting him at a massive discount in the 9th round. So I think there's just a lot of outs and a lot of ways in which these guys can be like, massive difference makers on your teams, where I think a lot of players that you're drafting throughout the draft, we kind of already know who they are, and you're drafting them more for safety, where I think this just offers you're trying to win your league. And I think the idea of trying to win your league is to get guys who have these different difference-making opportunities.
Makes sense.
Jared, let me ask you this real quick. I took 2 Jets wide receivers back to back, my last 2 picks. You're the Jets. You're the resident Jet fan here. I know that Dalton can talk about Elijah Moore forever, and he's going to take his pick here soon. Talk to me about the Jets wide receiver core and why we're excited about it, and why I shouldn't throw up at the fact that Corey Davis is a wide receiver 1 in his team.
Yeah, I'm not sure I love the potential of having 2 Jets wide receivers on my team. I think we're definitely going to see one of them become, Zach Wilson's go-to guy, and I think it's going to be one of those type of seasons where they're going to just try and, get some connections going with Zach Wilson and one of the guys. Obviously, they're big fans of Corey Davis. They went out and signed him for a big contract, but also a big fan of Elijah Moore because, they brought him in early in the 2nd round. And then the other guy there looks like it's going to be Jamison Crowder. So, I personally just think it's probably a situation that I'd most likely avoid. But if I'm going to go with someone, I think Elijah Moore in the slot is probably the position that I would go. I think that, they're going to try and form that connection early on and try to build a franchise with Zach Wilson and guys like Elijah Moore and Michael Carter. So, and usually we see, slot receivers doing well with some younger quarterbacks. So I think where you got Elijah Moore is probably the better bet if you're going a Jets guy. And real quick, since I didn't touch on it, I'll just go over my 4 picks that I made. Ronald Jones, I think that offense is just so good. They're going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns this year. And my hope is Fournette kind of takes a step back as he's getting older. And I like,
playoff Lenny.
Playoff Lenny. He's going to come back in the playoffs, don't worry. But I think in the regular season, I like Ronald Jones. I think he's going to continue to get a bunch of touchdowns. Obviously, he's the PPR guy, I think, in that system. So I like where I got him, and I wanted to have a backup just because, Chase Edmonds doesn't have that, certified role with the Cardinals. Gesicki, I'm a huge fan of. I don't like falling pretty far down with tight end, so I wanted to make sure that I got a top tier tight end. I'm liking him and Irv Smith a lot in my drafts. So went Gesicki there. I think his connection with Tua is pretty solid. A lot of their wide receivers are hurt right now, so I think he could be big early in the year. Michael Pittman's one of my favorite sophomore guys. Obviously, there's a weird situation going on with quarterback there. We don't know when Carson Wentz is going to be back. Sam Ehlinger or Jacob Easton could be starting for, the first couple weeks. So that obviously makes me nervous. But I think, he was a good player towards the end of the season there, and I think they're going to try and continue to use him. And then I went Jalen Hurts, which I can explain more later. But go ahead and explain your pick that you just made, Dalton.
So my last 2 picks were Pollard and Alexander Madison. I like Pollard. Pollard is probably like one of my favorite guys. I think he's a guy who can profile as somebody who does everything. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, and he's shown throughout his short career that he can do that. I think it's just more of an opportunity thing for him. So if anything were to happen to Zeke, or even if Pollard plays alongside Zeke, I think there's some standalone value there, and there's just this absolute massive upside that could be league winning if anything does happen to Zeke and Pollard takes over in one of the best offenses in the league. So he's someone that I'm really high on, and I'm trying to get in every single one of my drafts, just as an upside play late. Alexander Madison, he's not someone that I'm like overly drafting a ton, but to a lesser extent with Tony Pollard, like he does have some decent standalone value. Nothing crazy, but again, if anything did happen to Dalvin Cook, this is someone that you're starting every week and you're feeling very good about it too. So with my build, I just want to like try and get as many like upside guys who, if something were to happen, like they have the upside to kind of like be this reliable player alongside the rest of my team, which is a strength. So that's kind of the type of profile I'm looking for right now.
Gotcha. Cool. So I'll go over my 3 picks as you're making yours. So Jalen Hurts, I didn't get to touch on that yet. I like his rushing upside. I think he could have a big year. I like the system that they're running. They have a lot of good young wide receivers. I just like that rushing upside that he has, obviously, and I think it would be huge at that point in the draft to get him. Philip Lindsay, this Houston running back situation is very confusing. Obviously there's David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay. I think he's the best one out of the 3 of them at this point in their careers. I think he's going to get the most rush attempts at the end of the year. I think he's going to be leading them in carries, and I like that upside of him being there. Obviously, they're going to be throwing a lot because they're probably going to be down a lot, so that scares me a little bit for a running back this late, especially since I punted running back. He's someone that I definitely like for sure. I didn't like the spot I was in the next spot, so I kind of dipped a little bit down. And I don't really like a lot of the guys that were in that range, but I really like Jakobi Meyers. He's been, great in the preseason so far. Obviously had a great year last year. They brought in Aguilar, they brought in Kendrick Bourne, but I don't really give a shit about those guys, honestly. I think Jakobi Meyers has that connection with Cam Newton as long as he stays in the, as the quarterback there. And even if Mac Jones comes in, I think, he's pretty safe there as a slot guy. So I really like him a lot there. So go ahead, Don, talk about your last 2 picks that you made.
I want to diagnose his picks real quick, actually, because Terrence Marshall, you talked about on the top of the show, Giovanni Bernard instead of your boy Rondale Moore. That is, and you still also have no quarterback. So it's round it's round 14 coming up in this next turn. Talk about 1, why you passed on your boy Rondale Moore, and 2, why you have no quarterback yet.
Okay, so first of all, why I passed on Rondale Moore. So I already have 7 wide receivers, and this is the range of the draft that I want to start taking running backs in. So for me, when I was sitting there with Terrace Marshall and Rondale on the board, I genuinely didn't think that both of them would make it back to me, so I wanted to take one of them. I just went to Terrace Marshall because he's a guy I like a little bit better, and I have less concerns about like usage. Like Rondale Moore, I think, can be a guy who's absolutely dynamic, but how much of that is going to be in the rushing game, and the rushing game like doesn't really matter as much as the receiving game. So there's some other things going on there. To answer your question about the quarterbacks, like can we just first like address the fact that like every single auto drafted person here is like backup quarterbacks by like the 11th round. So like I was like fully not prepared. I was fully not prepared that I'm sitting there staring at the face of Deshaun Watson and like Kirk Cousins of the top quarterbacks in the 11th round. Like,
well, Deshaun Watson also went. Watson went
in the
12th round too. High upside Deshaun Watson.
So now the fair thing is this might happen in a lot of your home leagues. I feel like that's typically something that people do that don't really know the industry that well.
Yeah. So to be honest, I was not fully prepared for that.
This is sleeper territory too. So let's. I do want to. I don't know, Jared, if there's a question about any of this, but this is sleeper territory for sure. And obviously, we're drafting a sleeper, but these are guys that you might want to take. That are obviously this is late in the round. We will probably be wrapping up the bench spots in a lot of home leagues. So let's. I guess that's the question. I think that I personally am coming up on a running back potentially here. Dalton, you're a late round running back. You touched on a couple of these guys: Tony Pollard, Madison, Giovanni Bernard. Who is your late round guy? While you make your pick.
Oh, James White right now. Oh, my late round. Like, are you talking about like my guy who I'm just like putting my my stamp on this here, or just in general?
So yeah, so the question is, who's your favorite late round running back? And I know that this
Tony
is the
Pollard.
area, like you said, yeah, it's Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Tony Pollard and AJ Dillon. Those are the two guys. So Pollard number 1, AJ Dillon number 2, and those are really the guys that in every single one of my drafts I'm trying to get. And then the rest of the guys that I take are just guys that like I don't feel as convicted about, but I think like for example, like a Gio Bernard or a James White, like they're guys who they're not gonna like win leagues, but they can be guys that you're just starting because they're getting like 3-4 receptions, a game, or maybe they're getting some goal. There's just opportunities for them to have some value in PPR versus some other players. So that's just the type of guys I'm trying to draft.
Well, I know we can start wrapping up the draft too because Tim Tebow's ADP is coming up here for some reason.
You never know, man.
My guy here is Xavier Jones. I mean, Darrell Henderson, as we've seen, can't stay on the goddamn field. I think if you can get any of these Rams running backs, I don't think McVay's looking. I think McVay's going to try to become the Mike Shanahan per se and try to get these late round undrafted rookie running backs now because his guys he's drafted can't stay healthy. Xavier Jones is a guy you should be looking at. Again, Darrell Henderson can't stay on the field, and people are drafting him super high. I had Kamara on my team. I did get screwed over by someone picking Lat Murray before, which is why I went Brian Edwards, high upside receiver there. But I think this is sleeper territory right now. So Xavier Jones will be my late round running back to target. I think we can start wrapping this up here soon because this is Tim Tebow territory.
Yeah, and as you guys are making your picks, late round running backs that I like, Xavier Jones, which he just mentioned. I like Rashad Penny. They said that they want to run the ball more. He has such good talent. I think they're going to use him. Obviously, I'm a little worried about his injury and coming back from that, but I like him a lot. And then someone that I took, Devontae Booker. Obviously, Saquon just always struggles with injuries. I would love for him to stay healthy, but for some reason he just can't. And so I think, getting the backup running back in New York is a sneaky pick that you can make later on. And then Philip Lindsay is someone maybe a little bit higher that you can draft. Is someone that I'm a big fan of. And then go ahead and talk about your favorite late round wide receivers while I am making my picks.
I think the last guy I chose, Dolan, be real quick, Marquez Callaway. I think this is a guy that could easily be the wide receiver 2 when Michael Thomas comes back on this team. But right now he's the guy out of camp that you got to look for. Again, a sophomore bump opportunity. Obviously, the bump is not as high as a CeeDee Lamb or T. Higgins might be, but I think Marquez Callaway is absolutely a sleeper you can take here. I think he's got the wide receiver 2 upside. I think again Traquan Smith can't stay in the field either, so this is a guy that's really taking advantage of his opportunity. And Jameis Winston hooks the ball around. That guy throws the ball a lot. 30 interceptions, you got to throw the ball a lot. So I think he wins that job there. I think Marquez Callaway is either wide receiver 1 for the first month and a half, and then you get him as your wide receiver 2 in that team towards the end of the year.
Oh my God, Le'Veon Bell just went.
Yeah, let's wrap this thing up after this. we're in the dog days.
Wait, guys, I just made my Tim Tebow pick.
You're still there. Don't lose your late round wide receiver.
I got a few. So obviously it's like Marshall, like the rookies, Marshall Bateman, Rondé Moore, Elijah Moore. Those main 4 would be like the guys, but there's a couple of guys. Like one is Brian Edwards. You touched on him. You guys actually drafted both the guys. I like Brian Edwards. Just a good prospect. He has opportunity ahead of him. There's just been constant glowing reports out of camp, profile as well as an alpha. So I mean, the guy saw 13 targets last year. So it's like, I guess the main question is like, how much volume do we actually expect him to get? I think like it's probably like unlikely he sees like a massive amount, but I do think that if he did see that, he's the type of player that could, take advantage of that opportunity. And I don't think it would be crazy if we're looking at the end of the year and being like, wow, is Brian Edwards going 15 round? I think like there's a lot of upside for him to really, break out and be one of the guys that is part of the second year wide receiver group that we're talking about. Another guy I like is the one that Jared took with Jacoby Myers. That's one of my favorite guys to take. Right now, like he's basically locked in as the wide receiver 1 there, and he was efficient last year. He's their best wide receiver last year. every single thing that we've seen from here on from the off season is this guy's going to be the guy. Like all the beat reporters are constantly talking about him. And I think that this is someone that we can look back on and be like, wow, like, Ben Gretsch, compared him. He's like, he could be the next Adam Thielen. Like, he's someone that, has done everything well. He checks all the boxes along the way. And this is just like the secondary breakup. Like last year, like he was doing great, didn't score any touchdowns. Okay, well, what happens when he scores touchdowns? Like, what happens, when these things start happening and he's consistently producing week in, week out? Like, he could be one of those guys that we're drafting consistently in the top 5-6 rounds from here on out after this year. And I think like he's someone that people are starting to get attached to because they've seen it in preseason at the big game. But like the drumbeat's been going for a while, and we saw it last year too. So I think he's someone that could absolutely smash.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about while I'm making my picks. Let's say you try to punt quarterback just like Dalton did a little bit, and let's say you fall past that like Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield type of range. Who is someone like later on that you feel comfortable having as your starter? And I guess we'll start with Alex.
I think it's funny enough, Ryan Fitzpatrick was the pick there.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking for. Is he still on the board here?
I took Fitzpatrick.
No, not Fitzpatrick. Where's Matthew Stafford? Where was he? Yeah, he was gone. Okay,
yeah, he's gone.
Okay, so a lot of people have. I mean, at least the sites that I use is Matthew Stafford's that late round quarterback. I think again this ADP is a little bit weird, but I'm gonna eye a guy like Matt Stafford. I think he's someone that in a new and I love that offense for him. He's really good. Yeah. They really love that play actions. Getting him out and stretching or getting him out in a stretch, and I think that. He's a guy that's going to excel on that team. I think there's a lot of upside there. I think he's going a lot later than this draft shows. I think Matt Stafford would be my guy, late round pick.
Gotcha.
To answer your go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, just like to answer your question, like I don't feel comfortable with anyone like after that range. Like once the Fields and Lances are off the board, I don't feel comfortable. And this is like the first draft where. Like I have not had one of those guys. I was completely unprepared.
Well, guess what? This one doesn't count.
It's a mock draft.
Thank God. But there are a couple guys. Like I think Fitzpatrick is someone who I drafted. At this point, like I would just like stream quarterbacks and just look at matchups week to week. Someone who I have been drafting a lot of just like last round is Taysom Hill. Because there's a lot of upside there. So if he does start, great. I have a quarterback that I can actually comfortably start week 1, and if he doesn't, cool. I can just drop him and just like pick somebody else up. So he's someone that I'm kind of looking at. Later if I missed out, like I'll just kind of take him just as a flyer. I do think Jameis is going to start. So hey, maybe Jameis is also a guy like you too. Like he's constantly putting up fantasy points every single year. I know he doesn't have the weapons this year, but I mean, the guy loves to throw the ball. So. It could be worse. So I think some of those guys, Tua as well, someone that maybe we don't have the full story on him. He's coming an extra year back from that hip. There's a lot of questions regarding him, but I think there's potential that he could be a guy. So those are just some guys that I kind of like.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12 wide receivers. I just want to throw that out there.
How many running backs do you have?
Once again,
I have 3. I know it's just funny. I have 3 running backs.
I have 4.
Yeah, I mean this is again. Let's talk. We can as we finish up. We can talk draft strategy. So if you're in a position like me, you might where you have too many one position, and you could potentially be looking to trade some or looking to flip some guys and. I mean, is there such thing as having too much of a position, Dalton? Besides quarterback or defensive kicker?
No, but that's at the right spot. I think so. I think the onesie positions, absolutely. Like what I'm trying to do is when it comes to quarterback and tight end, I'm only trying to roster one of them. I think this year I may make just an exception for the teams that have Lance and Fields, just because I want to hold them until I have until they're starting.
Yeah.
But it's also part of the reason why I also like taking like one of the week tight ends early, because I don't need another tight end. I can just always pick one up and just stream on their bye week or
Yeah.
whatever. And it allows that flexibility for me to really like, especially like with what I'm trying to do. A lot of times I'm drafting a lot of wide receivers early. So I draft like, 6, 7, really good wide receivers that I can comfortably bank on. And then I'll just start just loading my roster with like 6, 7 or running backs, just like dart throws at running back who like, maybe, 5 or 6 of them aren't going to pan out. But hey, if I get one of them, like great, like, that's what I'm looking for. So I like to get a lot of wide receivers early and then just starting fading wide receiver and then maybe take like an upside guy like you mentioned, Rondell Moore, one of the guys that you guys drafted, and then just hit running backs just to kind of get those upside plays.
By the way, who is C. Tom Mo?
Charlie Tiamapio. That's
Why is he getting drafted as
No
a
idea.
tight
You got
end?
drafted?
Yeah, he
Yep,
got drafted.
right.
I mean, again, this is a
Right.
20-round draft, so shout out to
Yeah.
Derek for really looking at the roster size. So
Well, I wanted to
Um,
make sure we got like late sleepers just in case people are doing Dynasty or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just go over that, just in case.
Oh, I hope no one like sees my actual Tim Tebow pick, 'cause I thought we were gonna end it there, so I was like, I'll just throw him as the last pick. But
well, no, I mean, this is.
Nah.
I think. Listen, we have obviously we had a long draft. I think we shot some good ideas from his draft strategies. I think obviously Dalton will give you a chance here to kind of plug your information here so people can check out your fantasy football stuff.
yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Dalton Guru FF. Just follow me there. I don't tweet like too much, but I'll just throw like just thoughts on like players, or I have a thread where I recently started getting into like player props for like season long stuff. So I have a thread with like all that. So if you guys want to check it out, maybe throw a bet or two. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. So I'm just kind of keeping it low key this year, but I'm in the trenches. Trust me, I'm in the trenches.
Love it, Dalton. Appreciate the time. This is, and obviously good luck in Vegas in a week and a half.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, man. Hope they can win
Thanks for
500,000.
joining. All right, real quick, hot take. Who's gonna finish wide receiver 1 this year from everybody? Real quick.
Davante Adams.
Wow. I'll say Justin Jefferson.
Wow.
I'm gonna go Calvin Ridley.
I'm
You said
taking taking chalk. I mean, Davante Adams is going to be part of that Aaron Rodgers, kill everybody tour. So, yeah.
Yeah. He said hot take.
All right,
Alex, so that's why I went there.
All right, thanks so much, Dalton, for joining.
Appreciate it, guys.
Everybody
Thanks,
go
everyone.
follow him. Check out Apex Fantasy Leagues. For the 3 of us, that is it. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Peace.